Welcome back to Problem Solver Politics. I am your host, Cardin Ellis, with Cody the Oracle.
Hey, everybody.
And Jack Dorsey, CEO of Twitter, has just given another $5 million to the Humanity Forward Fund as part of a pretty large package of philanthropy. Cody, tell us what's going on.
Okay, so the news of this morning would be that in a podcast that was just released earlier this morning, Yang Speaks, between Andrew Yang and Jack Dorsey, Jack Dorsey announced that he would be giving $5 million to Andrew Yang's Humanity Forward Fund and to assist with their coronavirus relief. A little bit of catch up. We did a video maybe a month ago now, a little while ago, about basically that. Andrew Yang has distributed, I think last we checked, it had been over $300,000, going back a month ago. In various micro grants totaling between $25 to $500, generally speaking in the $250 to $500 range. I think there was a point where they got kind of cash strapped towards the end, and they were like, man, why don't we just give a bunch of 20s instead of a few 5 or 250s, which makes sense. Either way, in the month since, it's quieted down a bit, probably because they gave their big bit of money out and they're trying to raise funds since. So Jack Dorsey announced he's going to give another $5 million basically to go towards this. So we'll go through this article a little bit, and I'll touch on a few more things. So Twitter and Square CEO Jack Dorsey is donating $5 million to Andrew Yang's Humanity Forward nonprofit. The former presidential candidate announced on Thursday to provide 20,000 microgrants of $250 through the nonprofit's direct cash assistance program. So I guess this one will be more specifically focused on the $250 number. Still 20,000 people. Not only will Jack's donation directly impact tens of thousands of people in need during the economic downturn, it will help humanity forward and our movement continue to make a case for universal basic income in the United States. Yang said in a statement, the announcement came during a conversation on the Yang Speaks podcast, which, hey, pretty good place to release big news like that, Andrew, because guess what? Every single one of these articles talking about Jack Dorsey's $5 million donation, well, they all mentioned, by the way, it was on Andrew Yang's new podcast, Yang Speaks. Check it out over on...
it's on people's radar to actually check out and listen to now, right?
Better than a press release, man. You get a lot more legs out of announcing it in the podcast than you do in a press release. Anyway, they mentioned the money will be administered through Humanity Forward's Coronavirus Relief Fund, which, while it doesn't target areas specifically based on cases, it provides one-time cash payments to low-income workers most likely to be affected by the virus' impact on the economy. I mean, honestly, the way they word it, from what I've seen in my experience, you just go on the website and apply. I mean, I don't think you have to prove anything. You just say, hey, I need help, and they'll help you.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. I was wondering what kind of rubric they use, because you and I have said, look, means testing almost never works. So it's not like we want to require some kind of means testing, for this kind of thing. But it does kind of make you wonder, with the limited funds, who they're targeting first, and how do you get it?
Well, no, I'll show you. Like, literally, this is the application sheet. I just pulled it up. It's on the Humanity Forward. It's a Google Doc, and this is what it says. Email, where do we send the money? That's all they got to get. I mean, they're not gonna. Obviously, if LeBron James or Mike Trout apply, they might be like, if Ben Stiller applies, they might say, I don't think you need it. Like names they recognize, but by and large, it seems to just be going because also it's one of those things. The problem with means testing, it's like why have we decided it's anyone's right or position to judge how much you really do or do not need something? You know what I mean? Like why would it be Humanity Forward, which they're not doing? Point being, so I'll also link if you do want to apply for the money, by the way, because this is all it is. Seriously, there's email. If you can't give them a PayPal, you can even give them a Cash App, and they'll do that. And I wonder with Jack Dorsey if they'll partner with Jack Dorsey's other payment company. I'm blanking on the name, but Jack Dorsey literally is the CEO of a payment company. So I wonder if that would be
it's Square, right?
Square.
Yeah, he owns Square.
Because I believe they actually mentioned in the podcast how Square was actually working with various small businesses, but kind of more like food trucks, people who do independent hair care salons. I'm blanking on the name. Basically, people that don't have traditional big banks that go to and do
merchant services.
Yeah,
which you're
there we go.
For.
Exactly. Square was stepping in to do, which I thought was very cool. But just to get to one more last thing on here to kind of cover some of the news of this is that what this is actually going to mean for Andrew Yang and the Humanity Forward Fund. I think the biggest thing is one, I could just say anecdotally, I do. Full disclosure, donate to Humanity Forward every single month, and I get emails and updates from them. And I could just tell you, in the recent months, they've been asking, hey, if we could raise $56,000 this month, that'd be great, and I have to imagine a $5 million drop from heaven from Jack Dorsey is really going to go a long way. But Jack brought something up very fascinating I do want to touch on a little bit in the podcast, Jack Dorsey. So I have pulled up right here the Start Small Tracker. This is the Google Doc that Jack Dorsey actually just basically running his now roughly $1.5 billion philanthropic fund.
Yeah.
Which very unique goals. I think it's COVID relief, UBI, and then specifically like girls' education. So it's kind of like spread out into various UBI, but just kind of like, we touched on various different things. However, I thought it was really fascinating. He noted 2 people staff this nonprofit, essentially a nonprofit, start small, staffed by 2 people.
That was incredible. It was his
Google
assistant, Vanessa, if I remember correctly. And I'm loving the fact that he
specifically specifically to make sure the money goes to help people, and it's not you don't have 40% sucked up in administration fees, whatever that means.
Which in and of itself is almost a type and shadow, or a microcosm that represents the macrocosm of how a UBI system would go. Because remember, that's exactly what the governor of Alaska did. He said, look, we're going to build this pipeline. I'm getting the legislation through. We're getting the land. It's going to be this wildly profitable thing. And I can either start a government bureaucracy to manage the funds, or I can just disperse it amongst the population of Alaska as a dividend. Here, you guys, go vote on it. Do you want a big giant bureaucracy, or do you want the dividend? Well, if you listen to the Yang Speaks podcast, Jack Dorsey said, I had the choice. I could either start a big bloated foundation, or I could just have me and my assistant run this Google Docs spreadsheet to be completely transparent as to where the money's going, okay? And then just write checks. And writing checks, me and my assistant can do. And so he literally pulled with the funds from the very profitable Square Merchant Services, just like the governor of Alaska had pulled funds from the oil pipeline, and just started writing checks and transparently disclosing where it was going to go. And that's literally one of the greatest arguments for the administration of UBI that I can think of. Now, granted, this is private funds run by an individual CEO who can choose where the money goes. He's not a government official. This isn't a piece of legislation and so on and so forth. But it really does show that there is wisdom in saying the bureaucracies for running our programs are so thick, we should just get rid of them and give the money directly. And earlier we had talked about, what if Ben Stiller got onto the website and applied, and what if, LeBron James did, so on and so forth. To a certain extent, I don't care. I'd like to see the data afterwards, because I think there's a natural hierarchy. I believe Americans are good people. I believe we're honest people. Yes, there's a couple of scoundrels out there, but by and large, I think that just writing out checks, including to the scoundrels that might take it when they don't need it, is actually still more beneficial to those that need it and more dollar for dollar cost effective than trying to keep the scoundrels out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I also think that is something that, I get the theory and the idea of it, but in practice, it will go both ways. There will be time where the losses would be so high, it's cheaper to police them. And then there would be times where there won't be enough waste to police it being efficient. I understand. I think there's both, right?
Yeah.
Like there's one, if I have $1 million and if I don't police people stealing it from me, I'll give away $900,000 to the wrong people.
Yeah.
Worth policing that one. But just really quickly, I wanted to run through something else here before I wrap up. And this was referencing a friend over at African Americans for Yang put this together on Twitter. Just a collection of all the different people and their reactions to getting their initial micro grants. You'll notice a lot of these are that 250 number, something that Humanity Forward's been doing. And also keep in mind, we're going back to late March. I mean, this is something Andrew Yang has been doing for months now through his Humanity Forward. It feels weird to say it, but I got him. And Humanity Forward and Andrew Yang really are kind of one and the same right now. Humanity Forward is just, Andrew Yang is not going to ask for personal donations to give money out personally. He's going to funnel it through something with protections, and it's going to be Humanity Forward. But still, this is what they've been doing. So I wanted to really quickly run through and just show kind of what it's been, see if I can resize it a little bit. But kind of there's been people legitimately just having really, really needed the money. We're very happy to accept it for months now from Andrew Yang. I mean, this is really, I don't even say really, really needed. Oh my God, if I don't get this money, some people just could use some help right now. Going back to March, man. This is my favorite one. When someone included the text where it just says Andrew Yang paid you $250.
Yeah, exactly.
on your lock screen. I thought that was really cool. But this is what the money's going to continue. I think what I wanted to get to, and the point you're talking, he even responds personally to this one. He's probably responded to a lot of people, but to your point about having these nonprofits set up where a lot of money goes really where it shouldn't. A lot of money goes to deciding who deserves it, right? A lot of money doesn't go to where it should be. I just wanted to show you guys, for anyone who didn't, who hasn't been following this stuff or hasn't seen any of other content on this, that this money is literally just going into people's PayPal accounts. And they're spending it on groceries. They're spending it on rent. They're getting their cars. It isn't routing around 40 million places and then $30 ends up in your account. I mean, like, people are literally just getting PayPal notifications that here you go, $250. And I think that's I think the future of philanthropy anyway, maybe not microgrants through Twitter, but the future of it is there was a time you legitimately needed an infrastructure to get money to people on a larger scale.
I think that's fair to say.
Nowadays, you can just have a Google sheet hosted on Google servers that costs you nothing that says, give me your email and your PayPal. And then you just send them the imaginary money, basically, through the thing. I mean, you don't have to actually physically have a way to distribute this to people anymore. You don't have to find their bank accounts. And now, like I said, with Jack Dorsey stepping in with Square, I think people through, Stripe, I think I saw was also like some of these, I think Cash App that was doing it. Cash App was like, they can just give us the money and we'll disperse it to you through your Cash App. I mean, there is better ways to do direct money to people, which I think gets back to the whole spirit of everything we're talking about here, about this whole video, about this whole thing's happening. Why Jack Dorsey said he wanted to. Obviously, Jack Dorsey wants to help people. I showed you he gave away, almost $500 million. But the larger thing is what is going on with this is the idea of UBI, the idea of studying and testing UBI right now. And I think one of the biggest things for UBI that made it perhaps less feasible during the times of Thomas Paine or whatever was the distribution. I mean, what, you're going to have like a check line where everyone just stands in line? Yeah. Are you going to give them just cash? Like, how would you do it? Nowadays,
bread lines were stigmatized because there was big, fat, long lines, and it's just a bad look.
But not even that. It's like the question would be like, well, how are we going to get the money to the people? It's like, well, dude, nowadays the answer seems pretty apparent. You could just get a message on the lock screen of your phone that says the government gave you $1,000 today. I mean, like a lot of this stuff, and I do wonder for Jack Dorsey. I don't think he talked a little bit about it. But I wonder for Jack and for Yang. Obviously, helping people is important, but I do remember how important it is. I do wonder how much the information of how will we distribute the funds, how will we get them to people, and how will we ensure they have access to them? I think that's obviously kind of like the unspoken problem one with UBI, right?
Yeah.
You can have a great UBI plan, but if it's like, I have no idea how we're going to get to people, it doesn't matter.
If there's no infrastructure to back up and then disseminate the funds,
this
it's
is a great test for, can we get people money on a large scale quickly through digital? Can we? I think the obvious answer is yes, but still you have to make sure you can literally do it, right?
Because there were so many problems with the actual governmental system with the CARES Act trying to get people their unemployment. There were some of these unemployment agencies that were operating at 4 or 5%.
They're sending people for the I forgot the name. The $1,200 check. Oh, I forgot what they called it. The stimulus check.
The stimulus check, yeah.
People who didn't have tax information, they're getting prepaid cards.
Yeah.
That potentially, because their prepaid cards are actually going to be worth closer to like $11.50 because like some of them go to fees. It's ridiculous. But the government's seriously going to a private company and just being like, we're going to buy basically gift cards and send people because we don't know how.
Well, and then there's the question of theft. I didn't get mine. Somebody else used it.
It's basically cash.
Yeah.
You're basically doing cash. Unless I'm sure they'll have something set up where you can't do anything with it until you set your PIN up. My larger point is this, is that the government is definitely having some issues with how they're going to get money directly to people. Jack Dorsey, awesome, who's donating $5 million of his own money to, well, I guess he's raising too, but still, Jack Dorsey's donating $5 million to help Andrew Yang and what he's doing. And I do think a big part of this pilot, how people spend the money, I have to admit, is probably going to be something you can't really test for too hard during coronavirus. Dude, they're going to be spending money wherever they can right now. And people's behavior habits, I saw a bunch of pictures the other day. No flame, but I saw a bunch of pictures the other day of grocery stores. People they replaced the salad bar at my grocery store with tiny booze bottles because no one's buying fresh produce from a salad bar, right?
Yeah.
Like the self-serve have like liquor bottles in them because they're like, well, no one's grabbing their own chicken, so we're just gonna use it for something. Yeah. And so spending habits are weird, but something you can definitely test for right now, something you could definitely get measurable numbers back on is distribution.
Yeah.
Can we just funnel 5 million to people in the next week or two? Can we do it? Yeah. And if the answer is through PayPal and Cash App, yes, that is great information to have because we've seen with these stimulus checks, getting the money to the people can be a 2-month ordeal that has the government turning to American Express to buy gift cards for people, right? There is some things to us which aren't necessarily all great for distribution. I think Andrew Yang's ideas have been doing pretty well with it. And I think that's just one of the parts about when people talk about studying UBI, I think a big part about studying UBI is how they spend it. I've always joked forever, UBI is technically successful if you give them the money and they spend it. Yeah. It's just giving them the money is harder than it sounds when it's everybody.
Yeah.
over a span of a day or a week. Like,
Yeah.
how do you do that? And obviously, I don't think it's tenable to have. I don't know if Andrew Yang and Zach Grumman were literally like sitting there like tweeting people that, or sending people these notifications, or if they're set up through a bot or something, probably set up through a bot. But either way, I think this is something that's going to be really cool to get some more info on. How easy is this? I've seen Yang do it for a few months, but how can he turn 5 million? Because by the way, last I checked, Humanity Forward total had raised roughly $1 million. How could he do with like $1 million given out in let's see how long? Very interested, but very cool to see Jack Dorsey doing it. Again, I really like how Jack Dorsey, and all of the links you guys can pull this up yourself, but I really like how he's honestly running his nonprofit. I mean, you want to talk about transparency? Here is how much I had total.
Yeah.
Here's how much is left. Here's how much we spent, and this is where it went.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't get much more transparent than a Google Doc that literally charts everything you do. Oh, one last thing. Breaking news.
Uh-huh.
When I first loaded this up, when we were doing prep for the video, maybe 40 minutes ago,
Yeah.
Humanity Forward was not on there. I remember Andrew Yang during the podcast, and I will admit, it is kind of cool. I kind of secondhand excited for Andrew on this one. I do think being one of those nonprofits that are on Jack Dorsey's
It's an honor.
$1 billion spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Like 30 years from now, there might be kids in school learning about coronavirus, find out like, hey, Jack Dorsey, a billionaire, was running a spreadsheet, and he'd be like, and then what? Andrew Yang can always be like, and I was on that.
And they might be studying the origins of UBI, and this would be my last question. I love how Andrew Yang said that right now we are doing in 10 weeks what I thought 10 years automation would do in terms of changing and adjusting the economy. Okay, this whole coronavirus thing. And this obviously right now is going to be an event that will be studied. Jack Dorsey giving out this $1 billion is going to be an economic event that will be studied and analyzed for years to come. To see basically, does UBI work? This will be one of those dots in the timeline of UBI, because I am just like Elon Musk in the sense that I think this is an inevitability. Okay.
In that sense.
Yes, in that sense, it is an inevitability. And well, in many other sense, good looks, charms, and intelligence, I would include amongst them, Cody. But maybe not charm. Anyway.
Hey, arrogance, you got that one.
Arrogance. Now I'm just missing the $1 billion in a plan up in Northern California. So anyway, this will be something I think that is studied. And I'm just excited to see it happen. And I think that you are correct about the distribution being one of those big things that will be studied. My question is, Cody, have you seen any examples of really good success stories besides the ones we talked before? Or has it just been kind of an overwhelming,
what do you mean?
This just helped?
Well, here's the thing. It's like Andrew Yang isn't giving someone $10 million, right? Like, a couple $100 helps, man, but it's the reality. Like, Andrew Yang isn't I guess I was going to say John D. Rockefeller. I could just say Jeff Bezos, right? Like, obviously, Humanity Forward can't bankroll someone's life. Like, it helps. Yeah. It helps. It does. I mean, to be real here, it's a couple $100. It's not like, oh, wow, now I could finally quit my job and get my master's, right? Like, it's not that kind of money. But the point is, that's not what the really important thing to keep in mind. Another reason why actually, to that point, this is really good to study. Yeah. Andrew Yang says this all the time. Nobody should live off UBI. It should not be your primary. Maybe you could say primary.
Well, I'm curious to see what data of what it does get spent on.
But here's the thing. To me, and I firmly believe this, if the monies went into someone's account and then went out by them spending it or whatever they chose, UBI was a success. That's because I think a lot of people underestimate the mammoth task of just getting people the money and making sure they have access to it and making sure they can spend it. At that point, dude, Funko Pops, $900 statues, don't care. Buy whatever you want.
Yeah.
Whatever you want. Here's the other thing too, is I think there's a lot of stuff where we frame it practical and practically it's important to know where the money goes. It's like, okay, but you're also talking about looking over the shoulder of this. Like, at a certain point, that person's going to start questioning, how much of my own life do I get to run? And the government might say, well, we just want to make sure you're not going to spend it. It's like, well, look, man, as long as somebody's over your shoulder, kind of not telling you what you can and can't do, but it will impact habits in a way that's it defeats the purpose. The whole purpose of it is this, and it's something that's very interesting, and they bring it up in that podcast as well. Another big thing about UBI, it's a level of trust and freedom your government's granting you.
Yeah.
Here's money. I don't care if it's gone at the tables tonight.
Yeah.
Here it is.
Well, it's just like our economy is just like a fish tank. If you want to increase the filtration and the cleanliness of the water, sometimes you don't need to add more filters. You don't need to take out less fish. You just need to increase the circulation. And if you can just cycle through the existing filtration system more water, you will actually end up with cleaner water. So the fact that the money was just dispersed and then spent and then absorbed by somebody else means it was 100% success.
Exactly. So I mean, the UBI is about a universal basic income. That's all it is. Universal basic income. It's a income floor. That's it. You know what some people do with their income? Like, this is crazy to me. It's like this notion people be like, well, when some people misspend that money, it's like, dude, I would say a majority of people misspend a majority of their money every day. Like, this notion that, like, well, because the government gave it to you, you have, like, an obligation to spend it differently is kind of goofy to me. It's like, well, then don't give it to me. Honestly, if somebody were to just give me $500, like, $500, man, cool. And like, but you know, like, make sure you spend it. Like, why? I would take it, man. Don't want it. Yeah. I don't want to be responsible for how you feel about what I did with the money you gave me. Don't want it. You can have it. You know what I mean? Yeah. When it's just, here's your money, it does another thing. It's kind of a long one way of getting my point. It tells you another thing, though. It's something I definitely think the American government needs to send. It's a little tiny thing that the American government trusts you. Your government trusts you. Yeah. That's what it is. When they give you $1,000, no questions asked. They're saying, we trust you.
It's almost as like you want to repair the relationship between citizen and government, Cody.
Exactly. It's like the government saying, we don't care what you spend it on because we think that you... Tell you what, we take your tax money. Hey, what if I spend all my money on gambling? Or I'm broke. Government's like, don't care. We're going to send you to jail. Well, IRS, we'll garnish your wages, right? But then they give me $1,000 and suddenly I have to spend it the way they tell me to? Like, that kind of stuff's nonsense. So I do think it's another reason why it's good to have UBI pilots done outside of government control. Because you know what? You want to talk about a majority of the money being eaten up by administration fees? God, you think nonprofits are bad? Government's like... It's kind of secretly what UBI, one of the secret, kind of like, I don't want to say the dark side, but the other side of UBI is we're slashing these administrative federal jobs and these administrative local jobs that all they do is decide who gets how much money and why.
The system itself wants to be fed.
Yeah, but the thing is, though, it's jobs. It is people's main source of income being evaporated overnight because their job is made obsolete. It is. Yeah. It's just, that's something that happens all the time. And I think that's also, it's kind of one of the, not nice, but one of the ironies of UBI. It's like, well, when UBI is the thing that kills your job, it's like, that is cold, though. Hey, that federal job you have with the federal pension and like you can never get fired ever. Speaking of firing state employees, the police officer who refused to get back from, the police officer who hid behind his car at the Parkland shooting the entire event.
Yeah.
Was forced to be rehired with back pay. You can't fire these people. So imagine how angry they would be if they're like, well, we can't fire you, but your job doesn't exist, so you can't work here. Yeah. So that's just another wrinkle, a little bit. UBI is very interesting, very, very interesting concept, of course. We've been following it closely for a year. And two, we just saw a UBI candidate in Oregon go up and grab 7,000 votes going up against not long time, but a establishment incumbent running primarily on UBI. I mean, we're seeing people
and take out about 6% of the vote.
Yeah,
and we saw David Kim do the same thing. I think with almost 12 down in literally downtown Los Angeles.
He's on the primary. He's on the general ballot.
I think City Hall is in his district.
He's on the general ballot in a few months in November. I mean, that's the main ballot. Like, we're seeing progress already, and like I've said, normally. In a pre-internet, I feel like if a candidate were to have a long-term impact with their message, I feel like it's like the midterm after, right?
Yeah.
Maybe the next one. But we're seeing people. Like I said, his campaign's body's still warm, and we're seeing people running on his ideas already. So that's unique. That's new, and it's just been. I mean, obviously, it hasn't been a great. I would say it's probably not been a great few months for anyone, really. But Andrew Yang, and just his vision of
for the statists and the fascists, yes.
But no, but the larger point is just the Andrew Yang and Humanity Forward and what they've been trying to do. While their goal did pivot away from supporting UBI candidates a little bit, they still are. But they've said so. Zach and Andrew said so much that it's kind of pivoted to more relief efforts now because of what happened. This has really been a great time for him to kind of, put his money where his mouth is, so to speak. Like, okay, you say UBI would be great. You say it would help in a situation like this. Well, how? And now we're seeing. I mean, Mark Cuban came out with a really interesting plan. I think it was like, $2,000 every 2 weeks, but you have to spend it.
Yeah. It's a use it or lose it kind of program.
Yeah, but still, I mean, just the idea being that it went from people, and all your problems, my idea, but literally Andrew Yang got laughed at in the debate stage talking about UBI, and now everyone's desperate to come up with their own better version of it. I think it's really cool.
Yeah. So let us know if you guys have been some of the recipients of this Humanity Forward cash. We know we got a pretty wide and broad audience here. We'd love to hear from you guys, see how it's been useful, how it has impacted your life. Make sure you reach out to us. Follow us on Twitter at PSP Radio 1. You can DM us there, or else send us an email at problemsolverpolitics@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you and continue the conversation below. This is Problem Solver Politics. We will see you guys in the next video.